Hi, I'm Patric Palm, CEO and founder of Favro, and this is the Learn from Leaders podcast. The background to these interviews is that Favro clients are some of the most innovative and agile businesses out there. And it's used for collaborative planning by marketing teams, by product teams, HR, management teams. And what this means is that we get to know some truly inspiring people. So what we do in this podcast is that I invite them here for a conversation about something where they are true leaders, so we can all learn from it. Let's go.
All right, we are live with Erik. How's it going?
Hi, Patrick. Very good. And for you?
Yeah, not too bad. I just got back from Amsterdam. I've been hanging out with a bunch of SaaS entrepreneurs, discussing everything from business agility to fundraising and things like that. So that has been great. There's a bit of a snowstorm here in Uppsala now. I'm not going to be back in Vilnius until next week, so I have a short stop in Uppsala, and unfortunately, spring is not really in the air. But I'm inside and it's warm. So let's jump into this conversation. I'm really excited about this because very often when I talk about business agility and anything around hyper performing teams and so forth, it's quite often that it is with a person who comes from kind of the product development side. I mean, obviously, Agile came as a bit of a grassroots movement in software development, and today is basically the norm. But in your case, it's from the other angle. I mean, you have approached this from a business point of view. And you have not only worked with very fast-moving startups, but you also successfully made really big organizations more agile, and even government organizations. I think this is cool, but I think I'll leave the storytelling to you. So maybe you can just walk us through a little bit on how you got into work, business agility. A bit about your background, just so our listeners know, before we get into the nitty-gritty of that, so they know, a little bit more who we are,
Yeah. Okay. So I've been basically for the last 10 years, I've been working in the cross section of digital sales, e-commerce, digital marketing, and product development. I've been working in large multinational organizations like Telia, and I've been working with small startups like my last engagement at RefUp, and I've been working at hyper growth companies like Funnel. And I've done a bunch of different things, and I've become familiar with agile principles somewhere around 8 years ago, something like that. And then I learned as I go, and became one of my biggest passions, interests, professional wise. And the last 3-4 years, when I was exposed to Favro for the first time, is when I really started to think about this, how it ties together, the processes, how you can design organizations around it, how work flows. Before it was like it was one tool here, one tool there. It was a team working in this way. But the last couple of years, I spent a lot of time and energy thinking about how to tie teams together and make them more efficient and more transparent as well.
So how, because you're Swedish like me, right?
Yeah, that's
how
correct.
Did you end up doing so much stuff in Norway?
I was living in Norway. First I was in Norway for 6 years working in aviation it's called Party Swedes, going there when I was young, making money throughout travel. And I came back to Sweden to study, and I was done with Norway. And then I ended up getting a temporary contract there at Telia. It's going to go there 10 months. Temporary, go back, and then I got stuck another 6 years. And that's a kind of a typical story for people going to Norway, especially Swedes.
All right, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, okay, so I think the main thing that will be so interesting discussing today is really to do some kind of compare and contrast, between the various places that you've been and what business agility looks like. How would you like to? Where would you like to start? Would you like to start on, let's say, more of a bottom up team level, or would you like to start more on kind of the executive level? I mean, I'll leave it to you. Where do you find the most natural start for this conversation to be?
Now we can start perhaps bottoms up. Maybe I can just share a few thoughts on the different kind of problems in the different kind of organizations, and we can take it from there, because they're quite distinct.
Yeah.
So the first place where I was introduced to Favro was in Eriks. You had the CEO Jerome Frank Zettervold as a guest as well, I think.
Yeah. It was a great talk. Yeah.
And Eriks is famously known in Norway to be a true agile company, all around the organization, from development to marketing to finance. And there it was Favro as a tool was used to make people collaborate better. It was very operational. It was getting tasks done from a backlog all the way, and it flowed between teams, but it wasn't that much tied up to the strategy and the tactical things. We had a priority process, so it was tied to that kind of, and they probably built this out since I was there. But it was more of an operational, perhaps a little bit tactical approach, which was great. And then I moved to DNB Indung, which is Norway's biggest real estate agency. It has 700 plus real estate agents, and they have a special model where they have commercial people in-house and the rest is outsourced. So the problem there, and I was in charge of the product development towards one agency there. And the problem there was that we had so many people around us doing a lot of work for us, and we always had to go to them. So it was always like the work was being done out in branches all the time in external teams. But we as a core team were working together, and we didn't know what happened around us. So the key problem there was we needed to centralize our work and take it from there and being able to delegate it to different teams. So that was a kind of a different setting, and then we tried to tie that together with the executive level, because that was much more clear in a kind of a more traditional hierarchical organization where the strategy was set on top, and it was tactical and it was operational. And then in my last engagement now in RefHub, which is a small startup and with global expansion plans, spread out over 5 offices, with basically a commercial team and a tech team. And the challenge there was just to get one common place to work at, and to be transparent, to have meetings around things, and not starting to spread out work in different tools, and to buy a project management tool there and a dev tool there, and to gather the whole organization and create like a digital office for all of us.
So, I mean, what would you say? So, I mean, one of the uniting factors here across your experiences, are Favro, which of course makes me very happy. But what would you say are other initiatives that were used to drive business agility? I give an example of one thing I have in mind. Yesterday I sat down, and had coffee with someone who for quite a long time has worked as a leadership coach, and she was describing that their most normal gig is really that you have top management saying that we have all these managers in this company, and they intellectually understand that it's no one wants to be a dictator anymore. You want to be more of a facilitator. But the journey from, let's say, some old patterns in how you manage people might be a little bit harder to shake than you it's one thing knowing how you can evolve as a leader, but there's another thing actually being able to do it. And this kind of coaching is exactly what they were doing. So that was their business. So what I mean here is that another thing that a company could be doing as an initiative to drive business agility is to make sure that you very actively work with that kind of leadership coaching. So that would be, let's say, my second example. So what kind of those initiatives have you seen across these kind of organizations? And would you say that there's some kind of, can you draw some conclusions that some things are more common in bigger organizations or older organizations versus startup, etc.?
I think the need for transparency is much bigger in the big traditional organizations, where it's much harder to tear down established silos and the way of working, and it's a lot of email and stuff. And a tool like Favro it's just a tool, but it usually comes with a lot of other stuff. It's about how you set goals, it's how you communicate vision, it's how you tie initiatives to the strategy, it's how you prioritize, it's about being transparent about the job you're doing on a daily basis, and tie that together with the arenas and forums when those decisions are being made and how things tie into each other. So I think that is one part for the to open up. It's like a tool and initiative that starts a snowball effect where you have to go up all of these things. And that is my experience from the big organization. The smaller ones, it's more about true agility, to work fast together and being able to move tasks between each other and collaborate and help each other on a daily basis in one place and tear down obstacles.
Yeah. How much would you say, another thing I discussed yesterday, I have like so much ammunition from our conversations yesterday for our conversation here today.
Yeah.
And we talked a bit about measuring these things. Now we said, for example, when you say, you want to be faster, you can of course be faster in many different ways, but let's say, faster in bringing something from, ID to market. I mean, that would be one. How much improvement is it that you see in these organizations that are actively working with their business agility? Do they try to measure it? Do you have some kind of, is it like, no improvement, 100% improvement, 50% improvement? I mean, like roughly, what have you seen?
That really depends on the organization. So if you take the one outer point with the super small startup, like you don't have time to measure things. It's more of a gut feeling, and you just feel that you're able to do more and you collaborate with people more. And then you have the really big corporate organizations where maybe things are so slow anyway, so it's more about processes, it's more about how you prioritize and those things. But then you have perhaps the companies in between, like Eriks, for example, where I was working, where you have enough people, it's enough things to do and enough teams, and you're mature, agile wise or any other methodology, where it's actually worth starting to measure things. We didn't actually do it. I believe I think we measure stuff like burn rate and stuff like that. We're like how many days it took for a task to go from next up to being completed. But it varies so much as well between teams. And if you start as a for example a finance team, and you start working Kanban, or you will start working Agile in some kind of way, you don't have any baseline. So it's very hard to measure those things. Most of the work was done on your private to-do list and emails before.
So how would you, did you ever come across, an issue, people being like, Agile, that's just a buzzword. What does it really mean? How would you, did you have to kind of like sell the benefits of an increased business agility and some of the practices that you're trying to push, or was that always easy?
No, it's absolutely not easy. Actually, I've stopped using the word agile as much as possible, as long as I don't know that that the audience or the people I'm talking to actually understands Agile. So I'm trying to focus on the more like the culture parts and the mindset parts when it comes to transparency and collaboration and efficiency, and just to have one dynamic source of truth instead of sitting in different PowerPoints or in emailing different Word documents in different versions and stuff like that. So that's what I've been focusing on the most when it comes to selling this.
So that's interesting. So do you, I mean, since you said that you try to avoid using the word agile, I mean, do you think that we have an issue today, generally speaking, where since it is, you know, something that, you know, there's a lot of hype around it, that, you know, maybe we all need to start, you know, working, you know, with agile by not using the word agile.
Yeah, it's become, my impression is it's become kind of dogmatic, and it's been us versus them, and it's been product versus project, and you're anti-project, you're anti-processes, and and that's not the way to tie the organization together. So I've experienced many times you have one product and tech side, and you have one commercial side, and they actually want to work the same way, but one is talking about project and another is talking about product, and it just doesn't really work. And you want to avoid deadlines in an agile world, but in a commercial world, you have deadlines, you have projects, and it's not bad. And the common denominator is like, we want to collaborate, we want to get things done, and we want to be efficient and do things in a transparent way.
So how have you ever considered writing a book?
I haven't really considered doing one, but I would love to one day.
I think, you know, I mean, the title that we agreed on today, you know, I used to repeat the title, you know, bringing together commercial and tech teams to scale globally. I mean, that could be the title of a book. I think, you know, this is very top of mind. You know, yeah, it's very top of mind for a lot of companies. I mean, you kind of already talked a little bit about this, but I would love to go a bit deeper on, you know, what are the challenges that you come across, and, you know, how did you solve those challenges when it comes to bringing, you know, the tech teams and, let's say, product, you know, more close, you know, with the, you know, commercials, being, you know, I mean, my classic example is just like product and marketing, but obviously commercial is much more than marketing. But you know, you're bringing this closer. I mean, what challenges and what kind of solutions have you come across?
I mean, one of the main challenges is what I've been experienced, at least, is that there are many silos. There are silos when it comes to teams, it's silos when it comes to departments, it's silos when it comes to way of doing things, and it's also silos when it comes to tools. So you have salespeople, they're working in their CRM, you have a marketing department and they work in a project management tool, and you have the tech team, and they're all working in their own silos. And it's like most of them are happy that way, and then they can extract things, they can share things, they can invite people over. And if you as a tech team have a meeting with salespeople, you can just show them your Kanban board in Jira or whatever it is, and everything is fine. It works. So the challenge there has been to actually get and find a common denominator. Like, what is the value of gathering everyone, or as many as possible, in one place, and for people to actually use it? For some teams, it comes kind of natural. So a tech team, they use this. It's a natural part of their day. Marketing teams, it's getting there. Sales teams, they are not used to it at all. So what's the value for them, and try to find some value for them, even to be there. Maybe they don't even have to be contributors. Maybe they can just consume stuff that other teams are doing, or ask questions in there, or come up with ideas for a backlog or whatever. So that's been one of the main challenges, and get people onboarded and engaged and find the value. And that goes for Favro or any other tool that you try to bring the teams together in.
I mean, I think you're touching upon one of our typical selling points, which is that Favro really adapts to whatever way you want to visualize, how you plan things, and then we kind of put the complexity under the hood. But I'm not going to go sales pitch here now, because the point I want to make is that I think there are also other things and tools that can also create that kind of transparency and bring people together. You mentioned people call things to different things. Have you worked with trying to, let's say, unify the language? Because I sense in what you're saying that sometimes it can be that we're talking about the same thing. It's just we call it different, and it causes a lot of unnecessary friction and confusion.
Yes, so some minor attempts, trying and failing, basically. But the big thing is to not get stuck in methodologies and not get stuck in the terminal, and accept things for what they are, and trying to focus on what are we trying to achieve and how we're going to do it, instead of talking about getting stuck in the words and the terminology or processes and methodologies.
How do you, if you would go back in time and advise, your younger self, when you got into one of the, first situations when you were working with any kind of bringing commercial and tech together, what would you have done different?
Being even more empathic and listening more, trying to understand the need more, and maybe I had an idea and the solutions in my mind and my world sounded so good and so obvious, but it wasn't for others. And instead of trying to push that, and like when I'm now talking about digital transformation or agile transformation or whatever in general, that it's so important to listen and understand. And in this case, for example, with Favro and implementing it across an organization and getting people in there and using it, and it's the same for Slack, for example, or other kind of tools for everyone, and try to find almost do like a discovery phase, like understand the value for each and every individual or team and focus on that. Why should a salesperson be in Favro? It's very obvious why a marketing person or why a developer should be there, but why a salesperson? Why a financial person? And try to focus on that instead more. I think I was a little bit naive before.
It's interesting. Yesterday I listened to a presentation where they talked about how they organized their sales teams and how that had changed from being like startup to a much bigger company. And what was interesting was that I was definitely hearing a lot of the agile language there. They're talking about like sales squads. Small, and they said, we have everything we need in these squads. And I was thinking, cross-functional, So that's cool. Very cool. Very cool. I'm starting to see this stuff. Definitely. I've seen it in marketing for quite a while, but I'm starting to see it more and more in sales now as well. And I know we have several clients that are using Favro in sales teams. It's typically when it's quite complex enterprise sales. So there's a lot of like problem solving involved, and to be honest, that makes a lot of sense because Agile in the first place was all about how do we handle all this uncertainty. How do we have a product management which is designed for uncertainty rather than when you already know everything up front, you can basically make a Gantt schedule. So
what we did now, it crossed my mind now, what we did now in my last engagement was we just focused on the focus areas for each teams. all teams have a focus area. So if it was an epic for a dev team, like there's something equivalent to an epic for all teams. Even if you're a sales team, you're going to attend an event, you're going to do a webinar, or you're going to focus on a specific market, or you're going to go through processes or whatever. Just do that. Just update that part of Favro once a week, and we can gather around that and use the aggregated boards and have a all hands meeting or a global weekly stand up around that and talk about all the work that is happening in the organization and at one place. And then it started to move a little bit. And then from there, they started to work a little bit more operational, a little bit more task-based, and the wheels started flying, basically.
So finally, I want to ask you a little bit around how you think the kind of post-COVID organization will kind of pan out. Obviously, during COVID, a lot of companies had to be much more working from anywhere or working from home, whatever you want to call it, by necessity. There was just no option for many, and now we're seeing people being able to come back to the office, but many don't want to, and a lot of organizations are not gravitating back to how it was before, but rather kind of more of a hybrid approach. I think it's a bit too early. I mean, we haven't seen where this lands, but how do you think it lands? I mean, how do you think, in a few years that, basically, how do you think this kind of develops?
I think and I hope that digital and remote will be the default, even though it's not the case like everyone except one person can be gathered at the office. But instead of putting things physically up on a wall, or everyone is in one conference room and with one camera, and you do stuff in the analog world, I hope the default will be digital. So even if you are one person that is not there, you can still participate in the same way. So we can open up the flexibility, we can open up and adapt to people's life puzzle at home, or if they're sick or whatever, and there's always one dynamic source of truth. It's more transparent, and you know where things are, you don't miss out. And then I hope we're going to find a way where they complement each other instead of it's being a fight between office or remote. I think hybrid is the way to go, and for some it's only remote. But I think only office or only analog doesn't have any future at all for any company, really.
Yeah,
I think.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for sharing a bit of your experiences from all these quite different companies. Going back to what we even though I like being online with you in this conversation, I do wish that we get a chance to see each other kind of live in a not too distant future.
Yeah, same here. It would be great to grab a beer one day.
That would be fantastic. Well,
yes.
With that, all right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Patrick. It was an honor. Right. Have a good evening.
Talk to you later. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed that interview. I certainly did. If you want to elevate yourself as a modern leader and help your teams become even more successful, then check out Favro Academy at favro.com. There you will find podcasts, webinars, articles, all free of charge. Check it out.